Hello, everyone. So my name is Andrea Vena. I am the Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer at the European Space Agency. The European Space Agency is an intergovernmental organization that this year, in 2025, is going to celebrate the 50 year of activity because it has been founded in 1975. And we count now 23 member states in Europe, of course. We are a European Space Agency with a budget that is about 7 billion euros per year, which goes to 12 euros per year per European citizen. So you can see that the investment is very tiny for the results that the European Space Agency can achieve. We have establishment in many countries in Europe and antennas and ground stations all over the world. And the European Space Agency has also an European spaceport that is operated by the French Guiana in Kourou. Uh, Coming back to me, I have started more than 30 years ago working in the space sector, and I have had many responsibility positions in both private and public organizations. I joined the agency 25 years ago, working on strategic planning, risk management, knowledge management. And since 2021, I am the ESA Chief Climate and Sustainability Officer. I am looking after the corporate social responsibility policy of the organization. And in particular, I am looking at the way in which the agency is reducing its environmental impact in the activities that it is performing. So the major challenge that is for us is to align our objectives to the Sustainable Development Goals and to the Paris Agreement and the European Green Deal. And this is my daily job. The European Space Agency has taken bold commitments for a sustainable space. In the first place, for decades, ESA has developed projects and missions that are in providing benefits to the sustainable development of society. And the first objective that we are putting in place and the first commitment that we have taken is to increase these benefits. We know that Earth observation, navigation, telecommunication, and secure communication satellites provide benefits to the daily life of citizens. For instance, if we look at climate change and the global challenges that we have today, through satellite technologies, we can mitigate and adapt the life of human beings to the climate change and to global warming. We can develop measures and support decision makers in developing policies. We can, through space, and the European Space Agency wants to increase that, provide the means to face the climate change related extreme events that are more and more affecting our planet. On the other side, talking about sustainable development, this is very important also to notice that the scientific missions and exploration missions are also increasing the knowledge of the evolution of our planet and the solar system. And therefore, the agency has taken the bold commitment to uh, keep improving the use of satellite technologies for this support to the sustainable development of society. But at the same time, the agency is boldly committed to reduce the impact of space activities on Earth and orbit. In the first place, we have pledged for zero debris for our space missions by 2030. And this is meaning that we are designing our systems to be sure that the probability that there are space debris left in orbit is reduced to zero. And this is going to start in 2030. So we have put all the framework in place for making this happen. But this is not the only thing that we are doing to reducing and therefore reducing space debris and therefore improving the sustainability in space. We are pushing forward space traffic management or active debris removal missions, which means that this is the very first step towards space servicing, which is a very important part of the circular economy principles that we need to put in place if we want really to have a sustainable space exploration. At the same time, ESA has also pledged to reduce its carbon footprint by 2030. This has been done for scope 1 and 2 activities by 46%, and for by 28% for its scope 3 activities, which are linked to the activities that are performed by our supply chain. This is definitely encompassing the progressive decarbonization of the entire space sector. And this is something that the public agency as ESA is committed to do in close collaboration with our companies and the companies that are working for ESA by introducing progressively but irreversibly eco-design and life cycle thinking principles in the design of new ESA space projects. As I said before, and coming back to what is the sustainability in space, and in particular in deep space, circular economy principles, kind of reuse, recycle, repurpose, are crucial for a sustainable and responsible space exploration. And this is a very important part of our space exploration programs. And this is a very much important if we want to give a continuity of our space exploration activities. So the space servicing that I was referring to before, it's crucial for this kind of activities. To reply to this question, let me start considering that the international context is very much changing these days. So it's very much difficult to make a forecast, even for the next months, what is going to happen in the international scenario. How the rearmament of Europe would condition policies that are already in place, and in particular, policies that we want to develop for space. But it goes without saying that the main challenge that we have in the achievement of a sustainable space economy, both in space and in Earth, is about the coordination of synergies and the collaboration among all the space actors. This is very true in Europe, where we have a very scattered governance, and we have to put together different actors in the public and in the private sector. Public sector must act in a very consistent way to set policies, promote guidelines, and support companies in their effort. Space has a long cycle. We must act now if we want to take benefits to the next decade and therefore be in line with the objectives that I was mentioning before. So the zero debris by 2030 and the decarbonization by 2030. So 2030 is a crucial year, but we need to act now. And this is something that the agency has started to do years ago now, with the promotion of two main important umbrellas under which different parties can collaborate and cooperate. The first one is the Statement for a Responsible Space Sector, that has now more than 80 signatories, and the second one is the Zero Debris Charter, that has now more than 100 signatories. So these two activities are very much connected, and they are pushing forward for a more responsible use of space and a more responsible space sector. But we cannot ignore also the international context, as I said before. On one side, the European companies are called to compete worldwide, and therefore the combination and the successful combination between competitiveness and sustainability is a huge challenge. And there is only one way to solve this challenge. It is through technology and innovation. And this is something that we can do in Europe. I was mentioning the 12 euros per European citizen before. We do a lot with that money. And innovation is the keyword. This is the keyword of the success of Europe in space in the last 50 years. On the other side, we cannot ignore that also a regulatory framework is needed. And this is especially true when we look at in low Earth orbit regulations in the situation in which we are with the booming of the new space economy and the strongly increase of launches and the presence of spacecraft in the low Earth orbit. So these are the big challenges, and we are working towards them. Of course, I can speak here only for the European Space Agency. I don't want to do anything else on behalf of other international bodies. But for me, the first need is to intensify the coordination among institutional actors. We see that now in Europe we are moving very fast. Uh, we are developing, notably in the area of regulations in European space law under the leadership of the European Commission. And this is something that is very much important to give a coherent and consistent approach at the European level. The European space law is something that is going to be put in place, maybe not at the pace that we were thinking at the beginning, but it is very important that this is done through a coordinated approach among all the institutional actors. At the same time, we are preparing in Europe, and ESA is collaborating with the European Union on that, the next multi-year financial framework, where the big projects funded by the European Union are going to be continued and possibly new ones are going to be put in place. And the last point that I wanted to mention in terms of coordination with European institution is the PEFCR initiative that has now been launched by the Commission, and it is very important that we work hand in hand with them to capitalize the efforts that have been made by ESA in the last 10 years on life cycle assessment for space systems. That is something that we are almost the unique agency in the world to do so far. But coordination is needed not only with the European Commission, but with also other institutional actors, so notably the national agency in Europe, because we need to have harmonized requirements and procurement criteria as we look at the sustainability, both on companies and on products. We cannot imagine that there is a different procurement approach towards sustainability whether you work for the European Space Agency or for a national agency. It does not make sense. We are talking about the same industry, we are talking about the same requirements. And then I come back to what I was saying before, innovation. So we need to push forward the technology development and innovation to improve that portfolio of technologies, products, materials that can be used for space missions and have less impact both during their design and production phase, but also in their dismissal phase, where they are called for demising in the atmosphere. We need to think in a life cycle thinking way. So we need to look at whatever we are putting into space along its entire life cycle. And this is a very much change in the mindset of our designers and our companies. And the last but not least, I would say that we need to intensify and sometimes also to start a dialogue with our international partners. Uh, I am deeply convinced that there will not be a space exploration made by a single state any longer. Space endeavors are to be dealt with at international level within international cooperation, and therefore it's very important that we promote towards our international partners our approach to sustainability on Earth and in space. And this is very important if we want to have sustainable space activities in the future.